The Ole Miss Rebels, headed now by newly appointed head coach Pete Golding, travel 350 miles south to New Orleans to play the SEC champion Georgia Bulldogs in the second round of the college football playoffs. As many of you know, this game was actually played in the regular season. The only game that Ole Miss lost all season was this game, the first round of this game. The Dogs beat the Rebs 43 to 35. It was a real track meet, lots of points scored in that one. Will this playoff game be the same track meet? Will it be very high scoring like it was in the first matchup, or will the defenses come out and make some key stops? This preview will be structured by number one, my keys to the game, followed by my key player matchups. Number three will be my positional power ratings, and then at the end of the video, my prediction for this game. And let's just jump straight into that as we go over my game storylines, my key storylines for this game. My first one there, can Georgia limit the big plays on offense? In this game earlier in the year, it was a track meet. Like I said before, wide receiver Dazon Stribling had a 75-yard touchdown catch against Georgia. Chambliss had 2 rushing touchdowns, and although the Georgia D held Kwan Lacey, star running back for Ole Miss, to 31 total yards, 31 rushing yards, he still had a big impact with 2 rushing touchdowns. And just in general, this Ole Miss offense relies on explosive plays, and that's very important in this game. The question is if Georgia can limit the big ones, especially through the air with their struggles at corner throughout this season. Point number 2, who can get a stop on defense? Last time out, Georgia never punted the ball. They did not punt once in their game against the Rebels earlier in the season. Ole Miss stopped them multiple times, but they still got points out of those drives. They turned touchdowns into field goals, but they never turned field goals into punts, if that makes any sense. Ole Miss will need to get multiple pointless drives out of Georgia to stay in this game. Likewise, on the other side, as an extension of point number 1, can Georgia limit the explosive plays and by proxy make Ole Miss stall out on multiple drives? And we'll get into momentum and at point number 4, but that relies on momentum. Your defense needs momentum to really carry out these plays. Point number 3, straight up coaching. Pete Golding versus Kirby Smart. Right now, it's a huge talent and skill disparity between Kirby and Pete Golding. I mean, this is going to be Pete Golding's second ever game as a head coach. And the first one was last week against Tulane, against the first round in the playoffs. And kudos to him for being able to lock up that head coaching spot going forward. But this is a huge talent disparity in terms of skill gap, in terms of Kirby Smart is one of the top 3, if not the best head coach in the game right now, and Pete Golding has barely had any experience as a head coach. And that is a big question to me if he can narrow that gap, if Pete Golding can narrow that gap and be a better coach than what I think he is right now. I think he's a pretty mid-level head coach, but he can't really the jury's still out on him because he's only coached one game as a head coach. So can he create a game plan that is different and unique is my question. And then going into point number 4, who can keep and maintain momentum? Like I said before, this one is kind of generic. I get it, but in the playoffs, these games really are all about momentum. When you think about these playoff games, at this point, now that the G5 teams are gone, every single team is very talented. There is very little talent disparity. All these teams are extremely talented. They all got 5 stars, 4 stars, etc., with maybe the exception of Indiana, but Indiana's a whole nother case study, and that would be a whole nother video. When it comes to the talent level, it's all right there. Both teams are very well talented, although some teams can be more talented than others. Both teams are incredibly talented, as we'll get into. And what wins these games, in my opinion, it's momentum. Momentum is huge in these games. You look back to the Oklahoma and Alabama game. Oklahoma had all the momentum. They got out to a 17-point lead, and then Bama came rushing back with a huge momentum swing, was able to keep the momentum for long enough, and they were able to cruise to a victory. In a game like this, coming back to this game between Ole Miss and Georgia, if it mirrors anything like the first game, there's going to be tons of momentum swings. For me, it's going to be who can hold their momentum swing the longest and really get the most points and or stops out of that. So, with that being said, we're going to move on to now the player matchups, the player storylines, player or unit. And we're going to start here with, I think, the most important unit storyline there is out here. The Georgia corners versus the Ole Miss wide receivers. This one is a very important matchup between two units that are, in my opinion, really on the rise. Georgia's corners have struggled this season inconsistently. They've been inconsistent as a whole, but they have played pretty well as of late. While Ole Miss's wide receivers have consistently shown up, and they're one of the best units in college football. Pretty important, like we said multiple times before, that Georgia needs to limit the big plays, and they need their corners to show up big time because their Ole Miss's big plays happen on the outside. They happen with their outside receivers a lot of the time. That and a couple explosive runs from Kawan Lacey. And speaking of Kawan Lacey, point number two, Kawan Lacey versus the Georgia linebackers. Lacey, the first team All SEC and All American running back from Ole Miss, goes up against one of the best linebacker rooms in the country, featuring C.J. Allen, Raylan Wilson, and Chris Cole. Last time out, Lacey only had 31 total rush yards and but he only had two but he had two rushing touchdowns. Sorry, I misread that. I would say that the Georgia linebackers won round 1, pretty obvious there, but round 2 is for all the marbles. It's for who gets to go on to the semifinals. Point number 3, Georgia's D-line versus Ole Miss's offensive line. As we'll detail in the positional power ratings, Ole Miss's O-line is pretty good, but it's not a great O line. It's not an Ohio State offensive line, a Miami offensive line, Indiana really as well. It's not a Georgia offensive line. So it's a pretty good one, but it's not an elite one. It's not really a championship caliber offensive line in my opinion. Whereas Georgia's D line is pretty ferocious, especially against the run. But what I'm most interested in looking at in this game is how uh Ole Miss's offensive line pass protects and how Georgia decides to rush. Georgia has struggled getting pressure with four guys. They've had to send more than four a lot of the time to get pressure on quarterbacks, and I'm interested to see how they attack Trinidad Chambliss and how Ole Miss counters that with their offensive line. Point number 4, will either quarterback turn the ball over? Both these quarterbacks are really good at not turning the ball over. Pretty simple. Trinidad Chambliss, quarterback for Ole Miss, has only thrown 3 interceptions all year, and Stockton has only thrown 5 interceptions all year, the quarterback for Georgia. I could very easily rephrase this point here as will either secondary be able to make a big splash play and create a turnover? Creating a turnover against one of these quarterbacks is going to be really hard, in my opinion. But if one team does, that will really heavily impact the game, in my opinion, because it throws off what they're trying to do. Because both of these teams rely on turnover free ball for them to play at their best. I mean, all teams do, but these two teams to an extent. So that's the end of that. But before we move on to my positional power ratings, I would like to remind you all that subscribing helps both the channel and you as the viewer, as I'm putting out many videos related to both these teams and the teams going forward as well. Over this entire postseason and transfer portal season, we're putting out lots of videos related to both the playoff, the bowl games, transfer portal, and going forward as for early predictions as the season winds down. Even if you're not a fan of either of these teams, I would highly encourage you to subscribe as it allows me to keep making these videos covering all the major topics and in college football, major games and topics in college football. And also, as a side note, we're about to hit 500 subscribers on the channel. So if you could help out and help us get to 500, I know it's a small number compared to uh, a lot of other YouTubers, but we are grinding. We're trying to get to the top, and you got to start somewhere. And 500 is the next milestone that we're trying to hit. Also, be sure to hit the like button, comment your score prediction down below. Just comment in general. I really like interacting with y'all in the comments down below. And check out my other playoff previews that I've done. Okay, back to the video. That was long enough. Going into my positional power ratings, it's really simple. I've graded each team's units across both the offense and the defense, and I've given the edge to either team in said category, as you can see as I flip it over right now. As you can see, pretty simple. Blue and red, I have that position favored to Ole Miss. Red and black, I have that position favored to Georgia. So starting with coaching, this one's pretty easy for both the offense and the defense, and really the special teams as well. It's going to go to Georgia, and you can loop in scheme with this as well. Coaching and scheme is really the same thing. For a couple teams, it isn't, but I digress. So both coaching and scheme go to Georgia. At quarterback, however, and with a lot of these skill positions, I favor Ole Miss. At quarterback, I'm going to go with Chambliss here. His dual threat ability has not affected his passing game as it has so many other dual threat quarterbacks. His extremely low interception ratio is an example of that. He has had more yards, less interceptions, and has taken less sacks than Gunnar Stockton, the Georgia quarterback, and I'm riding with Chambliss as the better quarterback in this matchup. Plus, Ole Miss, very explosive on offense, and that's really due to Trinidad Chambliss as well as the wide receivers as well, which we'll get into. As Ole Miss gets 8.94 yards per pass, so that's almost a first down, whereas Georgia only has 7.43. So I'm gonna ride with Chambliss here at quarterback, although Gunnar Stockton is really the perfect quarterback for Georgia's system that they have going right now. But nevertheless, if you're gonna put them two head to head, I'm gonna go with Chambliss. At running back, I love Georgia's running backs, I really do, but you really can't go wrong picking the All-American first team All-SEC back in Kawan Lacey. I know he struggled last time out against the Dogs, but he has over 1,350 yards on this season with 21 touchdowns, which is insane to me. Got a lot of touchdowns. Nate Frazier and Chauncey Bowens is a great duo in their own right for Georgia, and will definitely be a big factor in this game. And, both of them combined may outplay Kawan Lacey, but due to Lacey's star power, I lift the running backs in favor of Ole Miss. At wide receiver, this is the most lopsided advantage in favor of Ole Miss, in my opinion, as the trio of Harrison Wallace, Tazon Stribling, and Deuce Alexander is lethal and one of the best in America, as they have combined, all three of them have combined for over 2,000 receiving yards and 11 touchdowns. Really great numbers there from the trio. Excuse me. The best wide receiver in this game, however, I think is Zachariah Branch for Georgia. He's carrying the Georgia wide receiver room with about 750 receiving yards and 5 receiving touchdowns. But what I will say is that the rest of the UGA receiver room is just not great. It's really not great. So give me the Rebs receiver room. Tight end, this one also goes to Ole Miss. It's really an extension of the wide receivers, but I like to separate it out because tight ends are used pretty well at this point in the season. As Daquan Wright for Ole Miss is just another receiving threat with about 550 yards through the air and 4 touchdowns to boot, while Oscar Delp for Georgia is actually pretty darn good, and I think he's actually the better blocking tight end. But he simply just does not put up the receiving numbers that Wright does, and receiving yards, better, more valuable than blocking, in my opinion, when it comes to the tight end position. Offensive line. This one's all Georgia. As yes, they have struggled at times this season, but they're playing great as of late. They played at an A+ grade against Alabama in the SEC championship game, and they're just one of the most talented out there. They're superb in run blocking and pretty good in pass pro. Ole Miss's is okay. They can definitely hold their own, but Georgia's is just flat out better in my opinion. More talented, more experienced, and just overall size-wise a lot bigger as well. Talent, this one goes to Ole Miss as they have all the skill positions locked up. And there is the offense. We're going to move on to the defense now, as this one is more dominated by Georgia. The coaching, we don't even need to go into this because we already covered that at the beginning of the video, at the beginning of this segment. This one goes to Georgia. Their coaching, defensive line, this one's dominated by Georgia between guys like Christian Miller, true freshman stud Elijah Griffin, consensus 5-star by the way in last year's cycle. He's had an instant impact. Gabe Harris Jr. and Xavier McLeod. I butchered that. This Georgia defensive line is great at stopping the run, among the leaders in the country in that category, and they're okay in pass rush. Like I said before, when they rush 4, they seem to not get quite as much pressure as they used to in past Georgia teams. They have to be able to send 5 or 6 guys to really create pressure, and that's a little bit of a problem, especially in this game, and I wonder how they will address that in this game, even will they be able to get pressure with 4 guys? That's a huge question. Ole Miss's defensive line has plenty of talent and skill with players such as Will Eccles, Xavier Harris, Princewell Umam and Cam Franklin. But I think both defensive lines are about equal in pass rush, but I give the distinct advantage to Georgia. Even in pass rush, I might favor Ole Miss just a little bit. But I give the distinct advantage to Georgia because of their run defense. At linebacker, I give this one to Georgia as they have one of the best trio of linebackers in the country, C.J. Allen, Raylan Wilson, and Chris Cole. They have a combined 208 tackles, 10.5 sacks, and 7 passes defended. Truly a goated trio of linebackers out there. Corner, this is the first edge I give to Ole Miss, really because of how bad the Georgia corners have looked at times. Um, Especially against Ole Miss in the regular season. Georgia it looked like they were a little bit lost at corner at times this season. And Ole Miss, they have some really good corners who have been playing really well as of late, and they've been consistent all season as well. Safety, this one swings back to Georgia as they have some immense star power and productivity here, as KJ Bolden, former 5-star All-American in high school, is a top 3 safety in America, in my opinion, and he has total 66 tackles, good for third on the team, and 2 interceptions at the strong safety position. The experience and talent in this room gives them the edge over Ole Miss. Run defense is just pretty cut and dry as it goes to Georgia. Their metrics wise, they have one of the best run defenses in the country. Pass defense, this one's going to go to Ole Miss, as Georgia honestly hasn't been the greatest at it this season, but I have no doubt that they will definitely show up in this game. I'm pretty confident in saying that. And then the talent goes to Georgia, as this defense is littered with 5 stars all over the place, really. And then going into my final prediction for this game. And by the way, put yours in the comments down below. I'd really like to see it. I have the Georgia Bulldogs winning this game 38-27. I have them covering the spread. The coaching disparity between both these teams is very apparent, and I think that that's the main thing for me. I think that Kirby Smart is going to be able to coach circles around Pete Golding and his understaffed team. Plus, I think that the Dogs are going to be able to get a couple key stops. If there's one thing that Georgia is good at, it's adjusting from game to game and really in game as well. They're great at it, which alludes to the coaching. And I think that Georgia's going to be able to end Ole Miss's run. And Ole Miss just isn't, ever since Lane Kiffin left, they've just been a little bit uneven, in my opinion. Ole Miss, I'm not in the locker room, so I don't know this type of thing, but it just seems to me that Ole Miss, they came out flat on defense against Tulane. They allowed Tulane to go down multiple times to into their red zone and in the first round, and they just looked a little sluggish on defense, and they were able to ride the offense to a win. But I think that Georgia's going to be able to easily put up 35, 38, even get into the 40s. And I think that Georgia's defense is a legit defense. I think that Georgia's being criminally underrated in this playoffs. I really think that they have a chance to go all the way this year. And with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.